So before we get started with today's nonsense, I want to take a moment to welcome the 150 plus new subscribers that have joined in about the past week or so. So if you're one of those, welcome. There is no escape. Anyway, if you've been curious as to whether or not A24's new movie Warfare is worth checking out in IMAX, well, let's get into it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Brockopp side. And, yeah, here we are talking about a new war movie from A24. This is one of those rare times with a movie I'm talking about where I went into it completely blind. I didn't watch a trailer. I didn't do a whole lot of research on it beforehand. All I really knew about this movie is that it featured Will Poulter and his eyebrows of doom. But to summarize it real quick, the movie is based on a true story about a group of soldiers in 2006 in Iraq, and it's told exclusively from their memory of the encounter. But of course, how does that translate into an IMAX experience? Well, let's start talking about that. On the technical side of things, Warfare was shot on the DJI Ronin 4D, a camera that's not approved for the IMAX screen. However, it's not the first time this camera has been used in an IMAX release. Director Alex Garland also shot his last movie, Civil War, on the same camera, which also got an IMAX release. And I don't know how many of you keep up with camera gear and all that sort of thing, but this is quite honestly an insane prosumer level camera that you and I could potentially use. So it's always really cool to see equipment like that getting used in big Hollywood movies on massive screens like this. To go along with that, the movie is presented in a 1:8:5 aspect ratio, which essentially fills up the entire IMAX screen. Always good when that happens. And like I've said in the past with several other IMAX releases, I think the IMAX version of Warfare really lends itself to the immersion that the filmmakers were going for with this movie, because you feel like you are right there with these soldiers in this house in Iraq in 2006 with all this gunfire and explosions and blood and all the horrible things that go along with war. And I think it's a great example of how aspect ratio can impact the way you view a movie, because if this was, for example, delivered in a traditional like 2:3:9 aspect ratio like most movies are, I feel like that would have definitely killed the immersion of the movie quite a bit. You would have felt more like you're just, peeking into a window viewing this whole thing and not feeling like you're right there with them, because they are just right there in your face, filling up the entire room, so it does feel like you're actually there. It also gives you a chance to really admire the fantastic cinematography, especially when you get these wide shots of the Iraqi village that they're in, and in different moments where the frame is just filled with all kinds of smoke and debris. So visually, it works, but I think the sound design and the sound system in the IMAX release is the real hero here. Right from the opening scene where we see the soldiers jamming out to some, 2006 appropriate music, the IMAX sound system is just blasting on all cylinders, just rattling the entire room, and then just smash cutting to a more quiet, grounded sound design. Probably the best thing about this movie is just how visceral and intense the whole experience is. It just puts you right into combat with these characters. There were a handful of moments in this movie where explosions went off, and they made the entire theater just jump out of their seats, myself included. And then in those moments you find yourself just a little shooken up trying to process what just happened, much like the characters in the movie. So this is one of those times where I think the IMAX is used really, really effectively for a movie that's, not a $200 million blockbuster with giant CGI worlds and characters and stuff, but a very just real world story that uses the premium formats technology to really sell you on what the filmmakers were going for. And that's all you can ask for, right? So before we do wrap things up here, I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the movie itself. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record, just repeating everything about it being visceral and intense and all of that good stuff. So ultimately, the last thing to talk about is just the cast itself. These guys are all excellent, featuring talent like Michael Gandolfini, Joseph Quinn, and of course, Will Poulter. Their chemistry was absolutely on point with each other, and they sold just every single intense and horrific moment that happened. I won't give away every single thing that happened, so you can come into it pretty fresh, but yeah, they definitely knew what they were doing. Overall, Warfare is a movie I do not recommend missing out on. That sentence sounded a little misleading for a second there, I apologize. It is one of the most intense, well-made war movies I have seen in a long time. Not that I see a ton of war movies, but this one's a really good one. As for whether or not you should check this movie out in IMAX, I'm gonna say absolutely. I feel like I've had to have said this so many times with these IMAX reviews, but truly, go see this movie on the biggest screen you can, preferably IMAX, and just get your shit rocked, and then go home and rate this movie 5 stars on Letterboxd. Assuming you have a Letterboxd, I've got one, I never use it, or, you know, whatever you choose to rate this movie at the end of the day. Like, you could rate it 5 stars, 4, I don't know, I don't know you, I'm not in control of your opinions. Go think for yourself, damn it. So, those are my thoughts on Warfare at IMAX. If you want to see another IMAX review from me, I got just the video right over here. Otherwise, we'll see you on the Brockopp side.